Hello and welcome to the People Podcast by Blue Communications, the podcast where we invite marine and renewable energy experts to share their career stories. I'm your host, Amie Pascoe, and in this episode I speak to Peter Keller, chairman of SEA-LNG and former executive vice president of Tote, amongst many other maritime roles since he started in the shipping industry in the 60s. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future podcasts from Blue. But for now, let's jump straight in. Pete, thanks so much for joining me. It's fair to say you've been in the maritime world for a little while now. How did you get into maritime industry in the first place?
Actually, by accident. When I graduated from college in 1965, I immediately went into the United States Army and was stationed in Germany as a transportation corps officer, and I served for 3 years. And when I got out, I was due to take a job with the old Irving Trust Company, a major bank in New York City that had organized while I was still in college. And I was literally driving up the New Jersey Turnpike, going to New York City to take this job, become a banker. And as I'm driving up the Turnpike, across from New York Airport, I look over to my right, and there's some cranes, some new container stuff happening, and an office building that said SEA-LNG on it. And I knew a little bit about the company from things that I had done in the Army in Germany and movements. I was running a movement control center there at the end. And just something in my head said, well, that looks a lot more interesting than being a banker. And I literally pulled off the turnpike at Newark Airport. I wasn't a complete dummy, so I called and gave the Irving Trust recruiter some silly story about why I couldn't make the appointment and could I come next week? And he said, of course, no problem. So I still had a job. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't giving up everything. And I walked in the back door SEA-LNG at about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. Ran into a man who's still a friend of mine, Skip Graycon, and took an interview. And they wanted me to go into the training program or think about joining their training program. And I said no. I was a retired captain of the United States Army, and I wasn't going to any bloody training program anymore. And they kept me around to interview with a particular gentleman who, at the time, I didn't know what he did, but it was a gentleman named Jack Kelly, who was really probably the developer of most of the procedures we still follow today in containerization.
It was such early days then, right? I mean,
absolutely.
We all assume that this has been happening forever, but it hasn't, has it?
This is October 1968. The European Container Service had only started in 1966. Before that, containerization was basically a domestic enterprise between ports in the United States, Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Europe only started in 68. In 66, Vietnam was underway at that time, and that's what was the forerunner to the Asia services. Was basically ships with military impedimenta, with SEA-LNG ships going to Vietnam, and then eventually Mr. McLean was getting tired of having the ships come back empty, and went up to Japan and with Mitsubishi and did his magic, and next thing you know, we have a Pacific service starting, and that was the time period that I got in there, and I was very,
Do you
very
think,
fortunate.
was it exciting because of that? I mean, is there something about, you seem to really like a challenge. So
Well,
was there something
at,
about the
at,
challenge of
at
it all at that stage?
the time, I had been in transportation in the Army, military transportation, and I really enjoyed that. Had a great 3 years. I mean, there was a lot of work at certain times, but it was really exciting to be in your early 20s and be an officer in the United States Army in Germany and all of that. Uh, and all the friends and comrades that you made at the time, and the idea of watching this new container process, and as I was being interviewed, I was over at the terminal to meet Jack Kelly, um, who I eventually wound up working for. I signed on. My first job was his gopher. Um, that was pretty much the title on my card, uh, and I just learned a lot because Jack was the guy who he was the man. He was the guy that developed all this stuff. But I remember during the interview process, watching a ship in what I thought was a huge ship at that time, handled 360 containers, uh, and these monstrous cranes, which are just little babies today, uh, and all the longshoremen and all the activity, and it was just really exciting. It was a lot more fun or I thought it would be a lot more fun than reading trust documents and negotiating interest rates
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
somebody's loan.
So how did things evolve at SEA-LNG? How you from gopher to
Well, that's another one of those little tidbits in life. When I finally did get hired, I actually took a pay cut from being a captain in the Army to join SEA-LNG, but that didn't last. That wasn't a problem for very long. Um, but one of the things that SEA-LNG did in their interview process, at the bottom of the application, uh, they and by the way, SEA-LNG tested a lot. They did all kinds of tests. Mr. McLean was very much into what kind of people he hired, and you had to be a type A. You had to be at least a 3-digit IQ. Um, you had to be reasonably strong in stature and everything else. I mean, that's just what he wanted. And you had to be a little bit confrontational because there was a stress within the organization, a positive stress, but it was there. But at the bottom of the application form, there was something that said, what's your career goal? And being a little bit aggressive at the time, I wrote down that I wanted to be chairman of the board.
did you punchy? I like it.
And and I remember Skip, the recruiter, the SEA-LNG personnel guy, saying, "You really want to write that?" I said, "Absolutely."
Who doesn't like a bit of ambition?
Then
Come
why
on.
would I join a company and not aspire to the highest role? And it's okay. Well, what I didn't know is that before you got hired at SEA-LNG, almost every executive in what we call the gold carpet area, that's where the senior people were, that's where Mr. McLean was, and Missy, his sister, Miss Clara McLean, who was really in charge of people and the environment. I mean, Missy was the one that really structured a lot of SEA-LNG, and was a power to be reckoned with. But all the executives got to see your application, and would pass on it, as well as whatever the recommendations were from Mr. Jordan, the VP of personnel. And so I guess they read this, and I sign on. I'm working for Jack Kelly, and Jack says to me, "We're going over to the gold carpet area. You got all the papers. You know what I'm talking about. You know, you've helped prep me. Thank you very much. I want you to come along. You sit behind me. Okay. Big deal. You know, you don't just get to go to the gold carpet area. And I walk in and I'm extremely shy. You know, I'm 24 years old at the time, I think, 20, maybe 25. And all these big, important guys, it's like I'm in a room of generals. And I've done that in the military a couple of times. And the only problem with when you're in a room of generals, they all had guns on. And you didn't trust what they might do with them. But anyway, so I'm in this room. All the executives are marching in. They're all friendly. Ho, ho, ho. How are you? And the president of the company at that time, Paul Richardson, who was a terrific guy, great leader. I mean, really a man for what was going on at that time in terms of the container industry. He gets introduced to me, and he says, "Oh yeah, blah, 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 nice to see you, blah blah blah." And with that, the chairman comes walking in, Mike McAvoy, and in a very loud voice, Paul says, "Hey, Mike, come over here and meet the kid that wants your job."
Oh.
And everybody in the room looks, and Mr. McAvoy comes over, and he was a great guy too, but he was probably the shortest person at SEA-LNG. The rest of us were all 6 foot. I'm 6'4". We're all big people, and Mike was maybe 5'8", and he had polio when he was a child, so he walked with a very defined limp. And he comes over and shakes hands, and he just said something funny, and I just said, you know, I said, I don't want your job today, Mr. McAvoy. You know, 20, 30 years from now, I'll be just fine. But what I didn't realize at the time was that put my name in front of every executive, and at the same time, Jack Kelly was very good about bringing me along to everything. So over a period of time, because I was with the executive group so much, because of Kelly in my first 9 months at SEA-LNG, there was somewhat of an acceptance as to who I was or what I was and what I was
You were
doing.
learning a lot through osmosis, I guess.
And I was learning a tremendous amount.
Time that much time with people.
And then, unfortunately, about my 9-month anniversary, Jack Kelly passed away. He was a hard liver, overweight, and just had a heart attack or an embolism or something. I don't recall what, but he passed away, and because of that, everybody moved up. Mm-hmm. I immediately, 9 months into the company, I get a manager's job, and I'm overseeing all the ports on the eastern Gulf Coast of the United States and managing the ships that are operating in those services. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was very fortunate.
But this is really, I find this fascinating because I do think it's too often overlooked, isn't it? I think a passion for what you're doing, you know, an ambition to progress, an acceptance to, as you mentioned, positive stress, you know, to be challenged and to accept the challenge and to embrace the challenge. That attitude is really important, I think, in anyone's career if you want to do well.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you know, in those days, everything was new. As I said, a big ship was 360. Once every 2 weeks, a jumbo would come in, 640 containers on one ship. Oh my God, huge!
Yeah,
and we were making it up every day. Every day was something new because this is a brand new industry. This is a brand new business. The European carriers are just starting to come into it. Other carriers are just starting to look at it. 1968, 1969, 1970, just everything happening. All kinds of containers coming in, all sorts of challenges with labor. The ILA was not terribly happy with containerization. Still aren't. All kinds of things going on. And if you were prepared to do whatever came along and jump in a pickup truck, go check a reefer, go do this, go do that, go settle a dispute with labor, talk to a client, whatever.
Agility,
that's the way it was. That's the way it was. Yeah. And you just picked up stuff. And then unfortunately, with Jack's passing, there was a huge hole, and everybody moved up. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those people that moved up at that time, and then it just continued. I changed jobs at least once a year.
And we talk a lot about, I think, in shipping, and maybe in every industry, but I really only know shipping, people do business with people. I think it's really important, people, those personal relationships are so important. And you've mentioned a few people there that have obviously had a significant impact on your career, but are there any other kind of characters that stand out, from your career that just you will never forget, or had maybe in a, at the time, negative potentially way, but actually in the longer term you see it as a positive?
Well, the world is full of characters, and we're probably we probably fall into that category as well. And to pick out one or two is really difficult. Obviously, some of the early SEA-LNG executives, people like Paul Richardson, Mike McAvoy, Mr. McLean himself. I was privileged to have met Mr. McLean many times, and later on in my career, when I was running Cast out of Montreal and other things that I was doing, I got to know Mr. McLean even better, together with a number of the SEA-LNG presidents, especially Ken Johns, who I worked with for many years as a consultant, and was a real. He was the consummate salesman. He was the one that taught you that it didn't matter what you did today unless you booked enough freight to fill the ship. And he did some things that I did later on in my career, including just being really focused on the day-to-day business and what actually happens minute by minute, and all of that. So yeah, those things were very important. To talk too much about other individuals I don't think really works, because there are just so many people, and everything I did, when I left SEA-LNG and went to Montreal to run Cast, or later on in my consulting years, and then later on at NYK with Tokugawa, with the Shogun and others, and then of course the Saltchuk Group and Anthony Cirillo and others at Tote. It just all blends, and everybody that you meet and everybody that you work with, customers. I still talk to some of the sons and daughters of customers that I worked with, and the industry is like that. And
you end up becoming friends, don't you? I think that's what we absolutely love about shipping.
Sure.
You relationships that are formed are really deep.
Yeah, you share a lot of interesting things, and that's all part of it. But the whole issue of people is really important. Whether and that's of course one of the things that the military teaches you. as an officer, you're responsible for a lot of people. And even at a young age, 21, 22 years old, you're responsible for a company of people, a couple hundred people, and that's important, and it's important to understand that. And one of the things that I always did, and I did even at Tote and other places, I would manage by walking around. At least whenever you're in the office, you at least got to take an hour or two every day, just to walk around, talk to people.
So that you're actually listening. So leadership presumably being about listening as much as it is about
see what people are doing, and very often, you'd sit down and say what's going on, and people would tell you things, and sometimes they weren't things that you were supposed to know, and you learn a lot.
Yeah,
you learn a lot. You learn what's going right, what's going wrong, what you have to look at, what you don't have to look at, and that's important. And in the early days of SEA-LNG, especially as a young manager, you spent a tremendous amount of time out in the yard working with the longshoremen, interfacing with the longshoremen, talking to people, and that's a particular problem I think that we have today in this industry. We don't spend enough time in the grassroots. We're spending too much time in front of computers and computer screens, as opposed to being out talking to customers, talking to employees, talking to longshoremen, talking to the people on the ship, and understanding what their issues are, what their concerns are, and what it is they want to do going forward.
Because that is absolutely one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, you've been in the industry for a long time, and what are the significant changes that you have seen? And it sounds like that is one of them, and not sort of an evolution for the better.
Well, yeah, and it's a slippery slope. It's a difficult thing. I mean, when I started in 1968, there were, I don't know, maybe a couple of 100,000 containers in the world. Most of them were SEA-LNG. And the way you manage the fleet and the way you manage the activity was still extremely manual. Sure, we had those fancy telex machines, and we had fancy IBM punch cards and things of that nature. And boy, was it exciting when the fax machine came in. I mean, you mentioned a fax machine to kids today, they look at you, fax what the hell is that? And today there's about 65 million containers in the world. So obviously techniques have changed. I mean, my last assignment at SEA-LNG, I was vice president of information resources. I was running the data processing group, and we were working on automating documentation, and we had already automated ship stowage and yard practices and a lot of the intermodal work, but it was just really beginning. And that was in the early 80s, and today it's just exploded. That 640 containers, a jumbo today has 22,000 TEUs, or about 10,000 containers. The growth is just phenomenal. So that requires a whole different level of management, a whole different level of automation. But I think there's a real danger that we get so big and so automated that we lose sight of the longshoremen. We lose sight of the day-to-day workers. We lose sight of the truckers. We lose sight of the customers. we don't fully understand what the customer does, what his business does, what his business needs. And we become rather impersonal, I think, in a lot of what we do. Sure, there's a lot of still personal relationships and sales relationships and so on and so forth.
The proximity isn't as close as it used to be.
And when you see the issues we have with longshore labor, for example, with the unions, a lot of that is people just don't understand the leadership of the union. I first met Harold Daggett, who now runs the ILA, around 1969, 1970, when he was a sweeper in a garage, and his father was a receiving clerk in our receiving office at truck operations, and his uncles worked with us. I mean, he came from a longshore. He comes from a longshore family, but you knew everybody. And you knew what their concerns were. You knew what they were thinking. You knew what they wanted. You knew how they interfaced one to the other, and how they interfaced with you, with management, and the same with the truckers and the people that were working in the terminals and everybody else. There was a camaraderie. There was a knowledge base there. Now, sure, as you move up, you lose a lot of that, but you got to be careful not to lose it all.
Yeah,
you got to be careful to stay in touch with the grassroots of the business.
And Pete, you and I know each other a little bit, and it strikes me that you work pretty much almost as hard today as you ever have done.
We make believe.
Yeah, well, you still work bloody hard. What keeps you motivated? What keeps you on track? Is there something that you do every day that I don't know, what keeps that motivation and passion for what you do, and passion for the industry, and wanting to continue to drive and facilitate change?
Well, I've retired 3 or 4 times, and for me, it just doesn't work. I need some stimulation. I need to have something, some sort of a goal, some sort of a mission, if you will, whether it's big or small. But just to have something intellectual and as I say, stimulating to do. Now, I mean, playing golf and hanging out with my friends.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you do outside of work? I mean, you live in a fairly lovely area from what I could see the other day, with the beach nearby. And
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I live in Southwest Florida. I live right near the water. I live in a very lovely gated community, and have a boat club and a beach club and a golf club, and my wife plays pickleball. And we have a lot of friends, a lot of social. I'm on the board of the association here, so I volunteer for that, and look after certain things here at the in my community.
There's a lot of collaboration both within your job and in your personal life. It's very collaborative.
After a while, our jobs and our personal lives really do have a tendency to blend. I mean, I think we all know that, regardless of the level at which we're operating, we all blend that together, and then you blend that with your personal life and your family and my wife. When you want to know what keeps me on track, you just ask my wife.
Perhaps we should interview her next time.
You don't want to do that.
Well, you don't want us to do that.
then you will hear some secrets.
Yeah, and get the real inside track. So I've got two more questions. Two more questions. One, what do you love most about the maritime industry?
Oh, I think it's the immediacy. When I was, when I was coming up at SEA-LNG and in other companies that I've run, it's the immediacy. It's the idea that at 2:00 in the morning, the phone can ring and you got to jump on ship, hit the iceberg, and come by chance, or what do I do with this ship? What do I do with this cargo? This is happening. That's happening.
So it's the it's the
when you're at
ongoing challenge, and the
when you're at work, it's decision. You don't just sit there and say, well, let's consider what we're going to do with this ship. Let's consider what we're going to do with this cargo. Let's consider what we're going to do. The trains are late. Let's think of something. No, do something. It's the kind of business, it's the kind of industry where something is always happening, whether it's trucking, whether it's air, whether it's transportation, logistics. It's an action related business, and I like that. I like the idea that you have to make reasonable decisions relatively quickly.
Yeah.
Sure, there's some major decisions that you really think about and work on and study and so on and so forth. But on a day-to-day basis, you got to move, and you got to have people that move. As we said earlier, you got to have people that work with people. You got to be involved. You got to understand what's going on, and then you have to appreciate what it is you're suggesting people do. From a leadership perspective, if you've done it before and you know what you're asking, that's a big plus. And I've been very fortunate in my years. I've pretty much done most everything.
In terms of the breadth of roles,
day-to-day operations.
Yep.
I've run trucking companies. I've done the rail stuff. I've done the intermodal stuff. I've run many terminals. I've been involved in building many of them. Run companies. Done the sales thing. The only thing I haven't ever done is pricing.
What's a lot in?
Yeah, but and it again, as I said early on, if somebody asks you to do something, you just do it. I mean, that was the nature of SEA-LNG. If you were in operations and somebody said, "Hey, come on with me. I want you to make a sales call." Somebody, you didn't say, "I'm not a sales guy. I'm an operating guy." You'd say, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
Yeah, let's give it a go.
The worst thing that happened, you get a free lunch.
Yeah.
But it was that kind of structure, it was that kind of organization, it was that kind of an upbringing, just like the military. The military teaches you if something's going on, do something.
Yeah, which I was going to, my final question, but maybe you've already answered it. I don't know. My final question was going to be, what advice would you give your younger self if you were starting out in the industry today? But maybe it is around what you've just said in terms of action and jumping on things, opportunities that are presented to you.
Absolutely. Just walk in every day with your eyes open and your head on a swivel. And whatever needs to be done, do it. And don't look for a lot of gratitude, because it will follow you. And be the go-to person. Be the person that the boss looks to and says, "Hey, I got a problem." Be the person that knows all the people in your organization. Be the person that knows their kids. Be the person that knows their problems. You don't have to deal with them, but you have to have some compassion. Mm-hmm. Be the person that's prepared to do the not so pleasant work sometimes.
Yeah.
Be the person that's always there and positive. And just because you may not like a decision, I always used to tell people, if you don't like the decision, you've got two choices. You can salute and do it anyway, or you can salute and leave. It's a free world.
Yeah.
But you're going to do a lot better over time if you're positive and if you do whatever has to be done, do it well, and move on.
Pete, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you taking the time to talk to me. It's such a pleasure to hear from someone that, well, you've got such huge experience, but I love your passion for the industry, for our industry. And I think that is really palpable. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's always fun. And if it's not fun, we shouldn't do it.
No, we should not.
I also for years used to give a talk to my employees that when I was running companies, that fun is not a 4-letter word. That was the title of the remarks.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Amie.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. It's always a pleasure to hear from someone with such huge experience and passion for our industry. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please support us by subscribing and letting us know what you think in the comments. Until next time, thank you for listening. I've been Amie Pascoe, and this has been the People Podcast by Blue Communications.